All right, students, I'm here to teach you how to create a cube using geometry, dimensioning, and eventually tolerance, G, D, and T, in the Onshape environment. So the first thing I want to do is I am going to train you to actually look at this like a machine would look at it. So when you're going to be machining, most of your machines, your 3D printers, your CNCs are going to look at it from the top. So we're going to want to go ahead and use the top plane here as our primary plane for building anything in this class. So what I'm going to do is go ahead and go to Sketch, and I want to click on the top, and that allows me to sketch on this top plane. Notice how the sketch shows up here. That means I'm ready to go. And the first thing I need to do is select a geometry. And the geometry in this case is going to be a center point rectangle. I will click on the origin, and I will drag out and click again. And that opens up my ability to dimension it. Notice that the lines are blue. When it is dimensioned, when it is put out and I will dimension it, I hit 2, enter, 2, enter, and now the lines have turned black. That means that I have geometry and I have dimensions. And that's the way Onshape works. With geometry and dimensions, you can actually create 3D parts. And those parts have a functionality, and that's the real importance between the real importance of geometry, dimensioning, and tolerance, is that we are building things for functionality, especially in the computer integrated manufacturing class. So I'm going to go ahead and click OK. And now we know we can extrude. So extrude looks like an accordion button over here in Onshape. I'm going to click on extrude. I will go ahead and click on the geometry I wish to extrude. And then I'm going to put in 2 because I want a 2 by 2 by 2 cube. And this is how I'm going to start this. I will then hit the green check mark, and I'm going to stop this video right here. Your first step is to get a 2 by 2 by 2 cube. I want to teach you now how to create another cube in the Parts Studio. So let's come over to the left browser, and down here you find Parts. So this part is named Part 1, and I want to change it. I want to change the name, so I right click on it and go to rename. I'm going to call it Cube 1. And the parts list is at the bottom of the left features browser on the left side of the page. Now, I want to use the geometry of this face, the cube, to actually create a different cube, a separate cube. So what I'm going to do is go into Sketch. I'm going to click on the face, and I'm going to go up to this little block. This is called Use. The Use Project Convert button. I'm going to go ahead and click down, and I want to use this. There it is. If I use that geometry, I already know that I've dimensioned it because it's black. Black geometry in Onshape means that it is fully dimensioned and it's constrained. So I'm going to leave this sketch, and I'm going to extrude that drawing. And I want to extrude it 2 inches. And now I have a second cube. The issue is, however, I've actually added the body to the existing cube. And I didn't want to do that. So in the extrude function, you're allowed to actually create a new body from the drawing on the face. And I just did that. You notice the difference in color? This is blue, that means it's part of the original body. This is now gray, which means it's a different body. And now I'm going to go ahead and accept that and watch my part studio down here. I have part 2. Part 2 needs to change its name to Cube 2. In this class, it's going to be really, really important that we force ourselves into a taxonomy, and that means a naming system, and that we pay close attention to how our parts or the parts of a functioning model are actually working together. So the first thing I want to do is create this second cube from the first cube. I've shown you how to do that. I'm going to stop this video. Now that I have created cube 2, I want to go ahead and move over to the assembly window inside this document. And inside the assembly window, I want to bring in cube 1, which I just brought it in, and I can place it. Click. And cube 2. I will bring that in and click. And now I'm going to hit the check mark. So now that I have cube 1 and cube 2 inside my assembly window, I want to create some functionality between these two parts. And what I want them to do is I want them to slide apart from each other. So if I want them to slide apart, I'm going to teach you how to use the slide constraint. So a slider mate is actually just one step. Onshape is fairly intuitive about picking up points on a particular body and understanding how we want to orient those points. So the first thing I want to do is I want to choose this face on the gray cube, and I want to choose the same face on the blue cube, and they will go into each other. Now, I want to set some limits. And here's how it goes. Notice how the Z plane is the plane that will allow these cubes to move to and from each other. I need to go ahead and make the minimum 2. If I make the minimum 2 inches, you see that it pushes it away from being constrained inside the first cube. And then I'm going to make this a maximum of 8 inches. And this is how we give some functionality to our part. Now, in slider 1, I'm going to go ahead and hit close that down. For some reason, it wanted to add a second dimension. Here, I don't need to do that. I'm going to go ahead and click on slider 1, right click on it, and then you see how it sets itself up for us. We are going to animate it. And when we animate it, we can play it. And this is the functionality I wanted between these two parts. So I'm going to go ahead and accept that. And I'm now going to come back into the assembly, right click, and fix cube 1. And now that I've done that, this will lead us to the next step. So before we leave our assembly to to go back into our part studio and create our third cube, I want to show you something about what the constraints are in this particular assembly. This assembly now has these icons, and the icon, if you hover over it, says parts inside are fixed, and this one shows the part that is fixed. So let's go back to our part studio and let's create a new cube a different way. One of the wonderful things about Onshape is that you can actually click on a body. So let's click on cube 1 down in the part studio, and we want to copy that or actually project it in a linear pattern. So when I click on the linear pattern, right, I'm gonna have to choose a direction. So it's going to show me that I'm creating cube 1. And remember, in this dialog box, I have the ability to create a new body. And I'm going to create a new body by clicking on the direction and choosing the far edge. And you see it automatically pops out, and I'm going to make that too as well. Now, in this case, it didn't actually create it as a new color. So I'm going to show you how to take care of part 3 and make it a different color from parts 1 and 2 down in the parts list. So I'm going to click the check mark to accept what I just did. Come to the parts list, right click, rename, and I'm going to call it cube 3. And I'm now going to click on the cube 3 here in the, and I'm going to right click on the cube after I've clicked on it in the parts list, and I'm going to come to this and change its appearance. Edit appearance cube 3. And I'm going to choose that color. And so now I have 3 different colors in my cubes. Now we'll move back over to assembly and notice that cube 3 is not part of this assembly. We will bring it in. And we will set it, and now cube 3 is part of the assembly. I want to now put a slider mate on this piece, and so I want it to slide from here and move this way. Again, I want it to slide from this face and move this way, but this is enough for Now it's time to think a little bit about the relationship as we put the slider mate between cube 1 and cube 3. I'm going to show you something here. I'm going to go ahead and click on this face and this face. And then I'm going to put my limits in 2 and 8. Now notice how it really didn't do what I wanted it to do. I actually wanted the cube to be extruded or not extruded, but to be assembled on this side instead of the other side of the block. I'm going to try to turn that around and flip the axes, and let's find out if that works. And the answer is, it really doesn't. So I have to think about what it is that I really wanted. And I'm gonna break this because I don't need it, it's not correct. And I know that it wasn't gonna be correct because there's a way to think about it. You see, the one you want, I want this to slide in to this. And now, look what happened to my z-axis. My z is on the correct side of the part. Now when I set my limits, 2 and 8, I can animate, and it works the way I want it to. Now, look at that little geometry changing as it goes away along there. That's really what is cool about CAD and CAD design in general, is that it lets you know where you are mathematically. I'm going to go ahead and accept that and wait for you to catch up, and I'll see you in the next video. We are back, and for the next step to build out these parts so that we have a design that will work like a puzzle cube, we are going to go from the assembly, which is down here in the bottom dock, to the Parts Studio. When I come back to the Parts Studio, let me go ahead and quickly teach you how to do a revolve by holding down the left key on your mouse. We want to revolve around and get to this back edge of part or cube 1. Now, I'm going to go ahead and choose cube 1 from the parts list. Click on it. I'm going to go back to the pattern, linear pattern. I'm going to click on this back edge to choose the direction. I want to flip the direction that it is reproducing itself in, and I want to extrude it too. Now, let's go back here to this dialog box, and instead of creating a new cube, I simply want to add to the existing cube. I am ready to accept it. Now when we go back to our assembly, you will see that the part has changed. But so too have my slider mates. So I'm going to go back into my mates and I'm going to edit them. And I need to have an offset in the Y direction. And the Y direction is going to be -1. It puts me back at the bottom of that cube. You guessed it, I'm going to hit the check mark, and I have to do the same thing to my second slider mate. Offset in the Y direction of -1. Here is what we end up with. And we can go and see if those still work. And we can animate them and see if we get what we want. And it's exactly what is happening. So we have almost come to the end of building this part. I will see you in the next video. Now that we have built this part, let's move back to the Parts Studio and constrain it so that the mates work. Let's move back. Again, you can just hold down the left key and revolve. And let's go ahead and rename our cube because our cube is no longer our cube. Let's go to the parts list, right click on cube, rename it as prism. rectangular. So now we have a rectangular prism, which is pretty cool. And we need to create the shapes that will finish off this as a 2 by 2 by 2 cube. So we're going to add to part 2 now. So we're going to go to cube 2. And we want to add to cube 2 like we added to cube 1. So let's just do a linear pattern. And let's choose the direction on that linear pattern. Let's change the direction and turn that into 2. Remember, go into the dialog box and click Add. Those two are now joined together as one part, one body. And there we go. Now we're going to go ahead and sketch on this face. These are things we know how to do pretty well. And we're gonna click a different geometry, which is corner to corner rectangle. We will click on this corner. Now notice how when I get to the corner, it gives me a little circle that lets me know that it's going to attach to the geometry that's already there. I click from that corner and I click on that corner, and hold on, I messed up. Let's do again. I need to make sure that I'm on the right face. So I'm going to go sketch. I need to choose the geometry. There it is. Make sure it says sketch 3 for me. And now I want to choose the proper rectangle. And I go from this corner to this corner, and notice how it automatically, intuitively created the 2 by 2 dimension. Once it's black, we know that it is dimension and it is constrained. So I'm going to go ahead and click the check mark and go to extrude. And now I'm going to extrude this block out 2 inches. Enter. And go to the dialog and click add instead of new. What happened? Well, when I did add, it wants me to tell it what do I want it to be added to. I'm going to come down and click on cube 2, and it solves the problem. Notice how cube 2 has been in the merge scope box opened up. So this is now a body that is part of cube 2, and I will hit OK to accept it. Guess what? The steps are exactly the same on cube 3. But this now is no longer a cube. Let's find out what it is. Oops. It is, I don't know, let's call it L-shaped prism. So right click, go to rename, and we're going to go L S prism 1. Because the third cube is going to turn into LS prism 2. I will let you catch up, and I'll see you in the next video. Sometimes it's just easier to go and break the mates. So you can delete the mates, delete the mate. When they start to give you problems, just delete them. Remember that blue rectangular prism is fixed. And let's move this one out of the way real quick. And actually, let's just suppress it. It disappears. And now we're only dealing with these two. Remember how we want to make it. We want to move this. Now let's grab this edge. We want to move that into that. And it does that really well. We want to set some limits. We want to go 2 and 8. And works absolutely perfect. Now let's bring this one back. Remember, we want to go this into this. So let's suppress this one. Let's click on this face. Nope, this face, and then move to that edge. Let's click on this face and find that edge, and they go together perfectly. Then we can set the limits at 2, tab 8, enter, animate. And go ahead and accept, and then turn back on both prisms, and you can now animate them and see how they move. And there'll be another opportunity for us to actually learn how to animate both of them at the same time. So you are done.